Welcome to the American Rugby Show. This is the Round 11 MLR breakdown. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Corbicero, joined by former US MLR Coach of the Year, Rob Hoadley, and the most capped USA Eagle of all time, Todd Clever. This is where we break down the analysis, but before we get to the show, I want to give a quick shout out for our Eagle Watch edition last week, where we had an exclusive sit-down, in-person interview with the one and only, yes, I use that term a lot, but this guy deserves it more than ever, Nate Ebner, three-time Super Bowl winner, rugby Olympian, currently on the journey to get to the 2021 Tokyo Games, which we are calling 2020 Tokyo, but it's a really good sit-down with myself and my fiance, USA Women's Sevens co-captain Abby Gustaitis. Lots of insight there as we go through his journey, his book, his story with his dad, insights for fathers, insights for rugby fans, sports fans, motivation, whatever you need to do, that is the pod for you. So make sure you check it out. But now it is time for the Round 11 MLR breakdown.
MLR Round 11. Here it is, the breakdown. Happy Memorial Day. What a weekend it was. And it was awesome to see all the teams across the league, and the league really put focus. As you know, I'm a very proud American, wearing the red, white, and blue and rocking that. But it was awesome to see everybody, getting behind that whole Memorial Day. There's teams that are auctioning off jerseys that are getting back to the community, all the armed forces. It was just, great. And we got some great rugby with some upsets. Hodes, what were your thoughts over the whole weekend?
Yeah, well, it was statement weekend, wasn't it? I think you looked at San Diego, ATL, Utah and Rooney putting in huge statements. And then New England scraping a tight win, but with their home games coming up, they're very much in it in the East as well. So great weekend of action and loads to pick apart. And I mean, I think obviously game of the week would have been LA ATL. Can't wait to get stuck into that one.
No, I agree, mate. What a game that was. Clash of styles, an absolute tussle, so much drama as well, captivating. Tough to see LA lose from my personal point of view, but I think it's great for the league and great for the game, and I actually think it'll be great for LA to experience that and learn from it. And again, Rooney, outstanding performance. What a way to make a statement. We talked last week about, East Coast, West Coast conferences. I think, that East Coast, Beast Coast mantra is starting to become more and more, noticeable week on week. That was two big performances from Atlanta and Rooney. Free Jacks, a gritty win, like you said. And then I just, across the board, I think, we're starting to see a run in to the playoffs and what's at stake. And I think, for certain teams, getting home field advantage or how the sort of seedings rank up in the conferences is another talking point, which I think is just going to become more and more interesting now as we turn that corner with those sort of final 6 games to go.
No, without a doubt. I mean, let's get underway. First game of the weekend was New England playing host to Toronto. Close encounter, but New England coming away 14-12. Who wants to put their hand up and talk about that? You want to talk about that, Corbsy?
No, it wasn't the prettiest of games this weekend. It was an arm wrestle of a contest, but it was, East Coast versus East Coast teams. This is the tightest division out there, points at stake, and I think you got to credit the Free Jacks for getting the W.
Yeah. It's the games you've got to win. These are the games that no one remembers at the end of the year, but this is now what's kept New England in it, and it was a good battle. There's some goal line stands. When it comes to these conditions, it's really going to be about it's easier to defend than attack. You want to actually defend high up the field. You want to put line speed on to force errors, have a great set piece, and kick and chase game, really, with a low error count. And you can see that from New England do love coming up hard on the outside, similar to ATL. You saw that they really came up hard early and forced a penalty at the breakdown from which they kicked 3 points. And it's kind of like when it comes to these games, it's going to be 3-point games, so it's going to be critical to force that pressure and get those points on the board. And then, of course, they scored from tight play. Thebes got his pick and go. And that's the nature of the game. But, we're going to come on to a bit more detail that Corbs has got on New England. But Toronto, I mean, again, it's just such a tough ask for them being away from home. But they still pull out opportunities. I mean, the Wadden try was fantastic, going through Johnston and Aleki Morris. What a great line to pick a hole between two good defenders. And then from nowhere in the second half, they came up with the best rugby of the game for the Tukalet try. Again, we say that they're one of the better teams playing from a ruck 30 metres from the touchline. They handle well, they support well out there, they run great lines. But it wasn't enough. And unfortunately, they also, in a similar way to we showed earlier, that New England used their line speed to create a penalty chance. Toronto did the same. They came up hard. Lesage picks up the loose ball, goes 50 metres. They get a penalty, and it hits the post. It is a regulation penalty, and it hits the post in a rainy day when you know it's going to be a 3-point, 6-point kind of a game. And then to add to that, they have a fantastic goal line defensive stand right at the end when they're down 2 points, like 8 minutes to go or something, and you think, right, they can turn it around. They go the length, they get up onto the New England try line in 2 minutes to go, and they create a penalty and attacking ruck from playing the ball on the ground. And it kind of sums Toronto's season up. They've done all the hard work. They defended on their own line. They got all the way up the field, and they couldn't go over from 1 metre. Plus, they'd missed a penalty, which would have won it for them as well. So, I mean, it's tough to see. It's tough to see from Toronto. They scored second most points in the league, I think, or they had before this weekend. But you got to think they're probably out of it now, lads.
I mean, I don't know.
No,
I
agree.
It was just last week we were talking about that they are the blind side coming through, and 1 week. I mean, it just shows you how competitive that East Coast is with the rugby and the standards and who they're matched up against. I mean, they lost with a bonus point, and it drops them down to bottom of the table. They win with a bonus point with a couple of this, then they're going to be got back in third place. And if they win another game, they could be in that top spot. So, I mean, it is incredibly close, on that East Coast, Beast Coast, for sure.
Completely. And that's the edge between these two teams now. And squeaking out this win, as I say, New England now have quite a few home games coming up. Toronto play San Diego next week. And San Diego is probably a team you want to avoid at the moment. So next week, I think, really is must win for Toronto, as they just missed out on this tight one. But, hey, Corbs, you want to get onto that line-out play where I think you picked up a real nice bit of play from New England?
Yeah, absolute. Lovely bit of detail from the Free Jacks. And, that is a theme on this pod. I love looking out for little details, and they keep delivering over and over again. Ryan Martin and his men are one of the best sort of intricate sort of set piece plays around there. And I want to talk about one play. I love this absolute detail from the Free Jacks. 38 minutes on the clock, and they go for an 8-man line out, an 8+1. All right. And if you look at the front of the line out, they've got 9, 15, and 12. Doggy Fife as a lifting pod there. They then move the ball to they go up, they dummy the draw, they get the drive in the middle. You've got the 7 with the quick, instead of pulling out, a nice little rollout peel as they send the backs round the front. You've got 3 backs coming round there. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, you've got Conradi, who I think is at the blindside winger spot, coming in on that sort of separation line. The defenders on the side of the maul are bit in on those 3 backs coming around the front. He gets the gain line there, Rob. And then I love the next bit of detail I'm going to leave to you to take over from there.
Well, as that's all happening, and obviously in the 22 you're expecting same way plays, Barlow slips back out to the left wing. Boyle stays behind, and Fife starts to move, and it's very difficult for the defenders to pick that up because they're so worried about the pick and go, especially in conditions like this. but they've moved so far in field with the peel there that Corbs you described, that it leaves quite a lot of space. So now all of a sudden, when Boyle does sweep left, he's now got a 4-man shot against a very narrow Toronto defence. And actually, the pass goes to ground from Poland, but really it was a huge try-scoring opportunity, and it would have been a great reward for a really well thought-out play.
Absolutely. And what I love about it is if you go back and you have the 8-man line out there, you're Toronto now seeing this for the first time, not quite sure what to expect. A lot of time when you look at line-outs and there's backs involved, you almost ignore them because you know they're probably not going to get the ball. But the way they set up a pod at the front in a 3, Dougie Fife with 7's experience, his height, he could easily win the ball there if he's completely neglected. There's so much other potential variation that the Free Jacks can build off that it's so clever, because you could send the backs round on a peel where they could actually get the ball, they could play out the back, you could just drive and then peel down the blind side with those 3 backs there. You've got so much sort of variation, and I think it's just really clever from the Free Jacks, and it's such a consistent theme that when you watch their games, you're always finding these little really well thought out plays, and that seems to be sort of Ryan Martin's sort of calling card in this MLR.
Yeah, and I think that's why it is such fine margins. If they lost the game, they would have been the ones struggling now in the East. But with that momentum, I mean, they also, Wacker missed an easy try as well when he ran past old Montero. He's great going forward, but he's got the turning circle of a London bus going backwards. I think Wacker must have run about 7 metres further than him, and then just drops the ball. So there was 2 try opportunities for New England as well. So both sides missed some opportunities. But with that momentum now, New England play 5 of the next 6 games at home. Their only away game is Toronto, and it's not really a home game for Toronto. It's kind of neutral. And their last game of the season is against ATL, who may have already qualified by then. So don't rule New England out. They could go on a run here.
Next game of the MLR round 11 was San Diego hosting Houston, and it was pretty much a one-sided affair. San Diego 39, Houston 11, down in Chula Vista in front of no fans, sadly, because they're actually playing some good rugby. Your boys are coming. They're picking up some steam. I think you have some inside knowledge on some of these fellas and what the environment's like. But it's great to see them playing some rugby, but I just want them to play in front of fans. I just know the fans want to see them play live. So, Hose, what are your thoughts on that game?
Well, I think the fans are getting them at a good time of the year, because it wasn't much fun to watch them earlier in the year. But you don't want to get in the way of this team at the moment, or you might look a bit like Sam Windsor trying to get in the way of Kenny Nazagenge, which didn't look pretty. But it was all too inevitable, mate. Like from both sides here. Like Houston are just, on a downward trajectory. They've shown some glimpses of promise, but just not delivered anything this year. And Legion are really, really on the up now. I mean, look, I don't think we need to spend too much time on this, but we can just go through. I mean, some of the things. Houston had 70% possession at one stage, and they never really threatened the Legion try line. Their line out was awful. Their reaction to lost line outs was awful. Legion were giving away penalties, but it didn't matter because Houston would kick to touch and lose the line out, so it didn't matter. They lose a line out in their own in Legion 22, just fall asleep and Legion go for a 18 metre break. I think that kind of sums it up. They overthrow to Dean Muir for the first Legion try, which Furno gets a pick and go at the end of it. The charge down try, I mean, I think my nan could have charged that one down. It was so slow, and it was like they sent a carrier pigeon out, giving them the message that they're going to kick there. It was just so poor. You see it coming a mile off, no strategy. There was a line-out drive, like capitulation, where they just started going in reverse. And then again, like last week, Old Glory get a red card at the end of the game, fine on a shorts. And Houston don't get out the half for 20 minutes. And it was the same thing here. Basson gets a yellow card. Houston then 4 turnovers in a row, and then Marani scores for Legion. It was so poor. And then again, Sam Windsor, like Homer Simpson, sort of disappearing into the bushes there when Kenny Nazagenge ran at him. But that sums it up. That it was very, very poor from them. But like Legion now, third most tries scored in the league, most line breaks, most tackle breaks, and that's all with no defence. They didn't have a defence for 9 games. So trust me, if you have a good defence, you score a lot more tries and a lot more points. So they can already score points, plus this defence now, with Phil Greening getting hold of them, they come up very hard, the first 5-6 defenders. They're putting so much pressure on the attack. It's great to see. And then even where Basson got yellow carded, at least he's trying to close off the edge and put some pressure there. So, and they've only just sort of started doing this. So they got 6 games to really improve it. And the depth is scary, lads. They've got 2 new forwards coming in that are going to potentially start. Rob Shaw and Tamalau, leaders, not involved. You've got 9 front row now, all fit. Like, you have Mitchell and Sylvia not in the matchday squad. They're good MLR players. So the training numbers are going up. You know, Corb, sometimes in MLR, you can't create the right amount of pressure in training just because you don't have the training numbers. But you've got people like Victor Comtat, who's not going to get in the matchday squad as it looks at the moment, but he's going to be studying the opposition lineouts and putting a load of pressure in for Scott Murray. So that's why they're competing so well. That's where the quality of their lineout drive, you want to watch out for that, because they'll be competing so hard in training. You've got Iglesias coming back. You've got Totovatal coming back. They can start resting and rotating people. Sam Wuchin probably needs a rest. He's played almost every minute of the season. So that's a balance, because they still need to win games, but they could come into a bit fresher into the playoffs than everyone else. And then one other note, I know you wanted to mention this as well, Cobbs. Not only veterans coming in, but sometimes young fellas coming in can really, really inspire the team. So I'm talking about Ethan McVeigh and Mike Smith. Like, I remember when we were at Wasps at a stage and we were struggling for some confidence and wins. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're like, let's throw him in. Christian Wade, Elliot Daly, Joe Launchbury and Billy Vunipola. They didn't have a worry in the world, lads. They were so happy to be there. And everyone starts remembering, bloody hell, this is fun, isn't it? We love it. And I think, I can see that in the player Ethan McVeigh and Mike Smith. I think they've really added to the energy levels of that team. And I think they're doing a great job. So I think it's watch out the rest of the West, because Legion are coming.
I agree, mate. I think they looked so improved. I think, Houston weren't great, which is still a hard measuring stick to judge where exactly the Legion are. But they're moving forward, and they've got this run into the playoffs, and the table is looking a bit favourable to them, with Austin capitulating with 2 losses, which is really giving them a chance. And, Utah are looking good, and we'll get on to that game, but their inconsistencies of their results this season really do create a pathway for Legion to make a run here. And so you look at their scrum, Paddy Ryan, massive impact. At tight end, you've got a rock there now at tight end, got them dominant penalties. His involvements around the loose for first game in were phenomenal. It wasn't just a scrum, he's carrying, offloading, getting through work. That's a big boost. Now you've got Furno and Mitchell together in the row. Their line out was looking so much better organised. They'd been kind of overloading their pack with almost too many ball carriers at times, but giving themselves that set piece engine room, or your front 5 that give you the scrum and give you the line out, is such a bedrock to then add everything that they do well on top. And then I think that was a massive improvement with their line out, their set piece. I thought their defence at times, the pressure you're talking about, is bang on. I don't need to cover that. I thought they looked sharp off turnover attack as well, like the ability to move the ball, which is such a big identity of Legion that we've come to know with the threats they have, the pace out wide, the finishes. That was great to see. And then, I think Houston have some huge issues which played into Legion's hands. The narrowness that they played off 9, to me, is just inviting Legion line speed, and you're going to have big collisions there, because it's nice tight defense, easy to defend. And I think Legion, blow for blow in collisions, probably them and Utah are as physical as it gets in this competition. Nightmare to play like that. No Povey's a huge loss for Houston, and their attack looked very stunted. Windsor is not the man at 10 for them. I like him better at 15 or 12, where they can use his kicking boot when they need him, but he's not the first point of contact for that sort of attack and the play make. And then I think Legion are in a strong place. It'd be great to see now them get some games at Torero as well, because one of the things that is noticeable across the whole league is that the impact fans can make and the crowd and the atmosphere. Like, you could see it in the Premiership rugby this weekend, having their first weekend with fans across it. You can see it in the MLR as teams are building crowds and the atmosphere is going. It's only going to up the home field advantage back into this league, which has been missing a little bit at times when you have these sort of stale, quiet atmospheres. So I think on a whole, Legion making a surge is just turning the temperature dial up on the West, and it's fantastic to now watch that playoff run in. How are Austin going to respond? Where are Legion going? And what do Utah do in these next couple of weeks is must-see TV in the MLR.
100%,
mate.
You guys are bringing up sort of playoffs, and you're talking about a team that, the first 9 games they didn't have a home. They were living out of their playing kit bags. So, I mean, you talk about playoffs for San Diego. I mean, there's going to be Utah, which is in fine form. Austin, that's going to want to argue it. LA wants to keep their top spot. So, I mean, it's not going to be an easy run whatsoever. But if there is some team in the league that's going to be able to do it, I think San Diego might be it. And you know what? They are coming home. So we shall see.
Next 4 games will be critical, lads, because they play Toronto away, and Toronto are a little bit lost at the moment. Then they play Utah, LA, Austin. And it could be decided by then, because the last 2 games are Seattle at home and Old Glory away. Old Glory could have their feet up and have the old beach sandals and the sunglasses on by that last game. So I think Legion will definitely win that, if they need to. Seattle are struggling and will be out of it by then, and that's at Torero. So I think this next 4-game block, they need to win Toronto, and then they play Utah, LA, Austin, and that's going to be decisive.
That in-conference games. That you said it, Rob. Can't agree more. The Utah, LA, and Austin. Those are going to be the deciding for 1 and 2 for sure.
This week's American Rugby Show was brought to you by Gillies Legendary Lager. A lager this crushable doesn't come around that often. Let's find out. I stand by that statement.
Game of the week, without a doubt. Top seeds from both West and East Conference. We had LA traveling out to Atlanta, and ATL brought it 17-12. Atlanta won. It was a great game, great atmosphere. They have something great going on over there. Corbs, what were your take from your comfortable couch?
Mate, it was an exciting game to watch. I think that Atlanta are very, very well coached. I think they're a real credit to this league. The style that they play, it is a Rubik's Cube almost as such for teams to figure out how to win the exchanges and put yourself in a position to combat a game plan like that. I think it was great for them to get the win. It was tough to watch from an LA point of view, but I think the way that they were able to disrupt LA in certain areas, and I know, Rob, we're going to actually break it down, but just on a big picture sort of thing, it was great for the league. The competitiveness, the ability that LA could have, left so much out there at times, been on the losing end of countless exchanges, but still constantly creating enough opportunities to potentially win the game is a huge bonus for them. And I think it'll be a learning curve for them to add some layers and some coping mechanisms for the next times these two teams potentially meet, because there were some huge sort of red flags and some of the strategic decision making I think they made at times, which played into Atlanta's hand. But on a whole, man, Atlanta's defense, and we'll get through the game and everything, but just that last set of sets at the end to finish the game when LA was still chasing, phenomenal bit of defensive work from them there, and I think on a whole they deserve to win that game.
Yeah, I mean if we start at the end, which is a great place to start, ATL just defended against the best attack in the league for 22 phases. It lasted 3 minutes and 10 seconds. This was the most complete defensive performance in the MLR I think we've ever seen. It was unbelievable. I cannot give enough credit to Scott Lawrence and every single player in that ATL squad for what they've done there. It was incredible to watch. They consistently took the gain line away from LA. We said last week that if you took any 2 minutes of rugby in the league so far, LA would have won 95% of the collisions in attack. That wasn't the case, and LA couldn't find an answer. And, we say defense wins championships. So we're going to see if that can last. There's a long way to go. There's a long way to go. And it could be very different the next time they meet. I think this will be, as Corb said, I think this is going to be great for LA because now they felt the pressure. Most likely the final will be at the Coliseum. We don't know yet, or it's something we can discuss later. It will be a very different game. And so, look, I was wrong for now because I said that, we were talking last week. I said the best from the West would beat the best from the East. I was wrong for now, but I'll stick with it. I think we're a long way from playoff rugby yet. But can't give enough credit for this performance.
I completely agree. I think even just looking at some of the final stats at the end of the game just sort of tells so much. Atlanta, 38% possession. All right, LA, the territory was pretty even, 51-49. But then look at the carries. LA had 175 carries. Atlanta had 74. And then this is the massive one. Meters carried, 856 for LA, 363 for Atlanta. And the tackles made by Atlanta, 263 tackles. And they only missed 20 the whole game. Like, phenomenal work from Atlanta to defend that. No one's seen LA defended like that. New York had opportunities and they stifled them, but not that much possession and goes. No one's been able to handle LA like that at all. And it's so impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, it's 17-12. It was a better defensive performance than the Rooney one. If you look at it, the Cottrell try was unfathomably soft. I mean, where did that come from? How can you tap us at 5 metre and he goes straight through Connor Keys, I think? It was unbelievable. It was an absolute giveaway after how hard they worked. And in fact, the try, Van der Merwe's try, they defended it much better than Legion. Obviously, they'd seen the move before, but it was only a missed tackle from Misalagu. He still could have made that tackle. But systematically, they just didn't, they barely made a mistake. So let's have a little look through some of these examples. I think one of the keys was O'Keefe. We've raved about him in attack over the past few weeks, but he was absolutely brilliant in defence here. He was given a clear role and he executed it in a way that LA couldn't quite figure out. So early on, we see O'Keefe and Waitokia coming up so hard. They sprint up with absolute conviction in the plan and each other. And then as they're coming up, you can see what they're doing in the backfield is also very important because often O'Keefe would come off and leave two attackers outside him. He'd be pretty narrow. But Van Voot would then also work incredibly hard to close from behind him. And then they'd work on that slow breakdown. So they'd slow that and then LA have to start all over again. It was incredibly impressive. There was another example where Goddard wanted to play out to the left. Waitokia gets in that space earlier and he actually turns Goddard back the other way. So now he's playing behind the breakdown, completely out of the LA plan and out of the LA shape. When he goes back the other way, they've split the centres. Waitokia's got 15 on his back, but defends as a centre because they put Carl Say at the back. They go back the other way, and now O'Keefe's up in the lane, and he actually gets an interception this time. It's pulled back for an offence in the ruck. But another fantastic example of being aggressive, cutting off the edge, even if it's leaving two or sometimes even three attackers outside and saying, well, you got to beat us. And we've seen so often other teams against LA, because they've got all these options and all these men running at you and the threats out wide, they try to drift off to cover the wide threats. But by drifting off, you're just allowing the attack to run onto you and making it easier. Whereas ATL said, no, we'll take you behind the gain line and you got to figure it out. And so they took LA out of their game plan. And then another example in the second half, which is really, really important here. If you just freeze frame and look at Van Voot out the back, he's covering as 15, although they interchange. He's over on inside the posts when LA are making their original play. They move it out to the left, and the work off the ball is different class. So the centres we know are going to come up and really close hard. Now, when Giteau looks to go wide, there's no real chip space because Van Voot's still 5 metres behind. But as he makes the pass, the closing speed now means that Meeks gets a man and ball tackle, and it's yet another forward pass under pressure. I mean, they thought there was space there, and Van Voot just closes it whilst the playmaker's looking up, the receiver's looking in to catch. As he catches the pass, he's under pressure. It's absolutely brilliant, the timing and the conviction that they execute with.
No, mate, I think defensively, to shut down the options for LA was fantastic. You could see LA were trying to get to the outside of that line speed, whether it be big missed passes to get out there, but the kicking space behind what you usually think of a lot of the time when a team is aggressive with line speed wasn't there because they marshaled it well. And then what I loved as well is with the kicking exchanges from Atlanta, they just put so much pressure back on LA. I thought there was times where they would just kick and they would kick catchable kicks to LA, which were just outside the 22, so they couldn't mark them. And then they would just come with unbelievable line speed, pressure, numbers to that breakdown, make it an absolute dogfight and just slow LA down. And if LA decided to play, it was at their own risk. And if not, they would kick it back. And then Atlanta would rinse, wash and repeat and do the same thing over and over again. It was fantastic to see.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some really good footage on that, Corbs, that we can look at as well. I would encourage, I know some people are listening, but if you can get over to YouTube and watch these clips as well, I think it really illuminates the conversation. Again, O'Keefe, pushing through on the second line of attackers from deep. Then they play wide. Meeks gets tackled behind the gain line, which happened a lot in the game, and then they don't have an exit plan then they're just playing to survive, as we talked about, Todd, last week. You said, you mean kicking is designed to get you a better attacking platform? Well, even LA were getting rushed. And then Giteau kicks a bomb and it goes backwards. I mean, how many times have you seen that for him in any team? And then, a huge demonstration of, the ATL way. There's a kick exchange, there's a counter-attack. ATL put a kick up, they smash the receiver, they pressure at that breakdown. LA have got slow ball, they can't exit over the halfway line, right? So the exit is in their half. Van Voot, great catch execution. Goose, who's very important, slows everything up, controls it, sets up his ruck, sets up his organisation. They get 4 chases on the blind side, perfect box, let them catch it again, as you said, Corbs, smash them, and then Dan wins the penalty at the breakdown. That is ATL rugby. They go 3-0 up. They didn't go 3-0 up, because that's what led to the first try, where similar to New England, the forwards are putting in the pressure on near the try line, and they sweep with O'Keefe, Ezcura and Kulsa. And as Goose looks up, plays to the left, it's Ryberg at the first defender for LA. You cannot have your blind winger at the one defender position. Your wing has to defend the wing. When we were at Wasp, Sean Edwards would say to us, if you're playing on the wing and your wing scores, that's your fault. You can't how can you let your wing score, and made it a personal battle? So now Ryberg, the pace is at the inside. Then they've got forwards scrambling, and it's a beautiful pass to the outside to Kulsa, and the forwards have got no chance to cover that in that distance. So it was brilliant play. You've got Kulsa, Ezcura, Van Voot and Waitokia have all played 15, you see, as well. So they can rotate happily in the backfield. They can all catch, they can all kick, and they can all run back, and they all work incredibly hard to cover distance. So, lads, that was literally the perfect 20 minutes of ATL rugby. The only thing, they conceded too many penalties, but it doesn't really matter because they're very, very aggressive. They'd made, as you said, twice as many tackles and half as many carries at half time. Well, it does. If you're looking for those stats for how to win a game, you're barking up the wrong tree, because that's exactly what they want to do. It was a real exhibition of ATL defence.
Absolutely, and there's so many even more layers to it. The pressure they put at the breakdown, the counter-rucking, slowing LA's ball down there, just adding more layers when you add that on top of the line speed. And one of the reasons why the penalty count didn't really affect them was because LA's line out capitulated. And yes, part of that's to do with the red card, and I think this is the time to transition and get onto that. That affected the game, because we were already in an absolute tussle of a game where LA were on the receiving end in that first half, under pressure. The Atlanta game plan was starting to pay dividends. That red card was a catalyst for that 20 period where it just turned the dial up on the control they could have at times, because the line out, they got the dom there. It gave them the edge at the scrum, which was hard to watch at times. But, credit Atlanta and their coaching department, because I think they've got an amazing set piece. I think their line out is spot on, but I think their scrum is phenomenal too. It's very similar to the way LA like to operate. It was a good contest, and I thought they got the better of it, but I think losing the second row there definitely affected the scrum. But it was just a complete performance. I think, the amount of time that when they did have the ball, where they actually had that possession and what they were able to do with it, they only decided to play in LA's half. They would box up to the halfway line in that game and just say, this is working, lads. Let's throw more pressure on them. And LA would get to about 40 out and think, well, this is the furthest we've been out with the ball in our hands for a while. Let's play and try and create something. But, credit LA, there were times where that game plan of just play in your own half almost led to fruition of points, but it's so risky with what Atlanta are trying to do because you're playing into their hands. I thought that the biggest takeaway is that for all that Atlanta did, it was still so close. And it's still like, you've got to credit that LA almost dug themselves out of it. If Ryberg could have got that pass off a little bit better to Goddard on that break at the end, how about Ryan James and the impact he made off the bench? Talking about a player that looks dangerous, phenomenal. And I just thought, when you play a team like Atlanta, one thing I think LA were guilty of is they were just too costly with possessions. Like, yes, you're struggling because you haven't had the sets, your set piece is getting hindered, so you're not getting through the phases like you want, but going out into touch to gain 5 more meters off a phase when you're under pressure and in the type of game you're playing, to me, is inexcusable. Like some of the forced passes in the 22, Gitto with an offer, there's a couple bit more patience from LA and they still get the tries they need to win that game. So there's a lot to digest in it. And that's why it was such fantastic watching, is that, hey, Atlanta just showed like their game plan done effectively can nullify anyone. And LA also showed that regardless of the stats, they'll keep going, and there's still a good chance they'll cut you as well.
Yeah, and I think the key thing there is, Corbs, that was the best ATL performance they could probably put on. They won by, 5 points?
5 points.
LA had a red card, and LA were attacking to win the game at the end of the game. So, and they may have to go to the Coliseum to win the final, or and it's not to say they're even going to get to the final. We're a long way from playoff rugby here. So get out your mind that you have an unbeaten season. That doesn't happen in rugby. So you're going to lose some games. So this is a fair enough game for LA to lose on the road. But they're going to be so much stronger for it. And I think you've got to look at some of the detail as well. It's because it can either be the plan or the execution. So in terms of how LA then changed to take on the ATL defence, I think Gitto stepped up really well, because take away these long floaty passes over the top, they won't work. Because if O'Keefe's in the lane, it means you've got to go high and long over the top. Carty tried at the end, but by that time, the last man's going to close you off and you're going to receive sort of at standstill. That ain't the game. You don't beat a blitz by long floaty passes. You beat a defence by blitz by great movement and short passes, and picking on some slower defenders. So just to pick up on that, I felt like Gitto took control a bit here. Where he receive and he'd take a couple of steps whereby the midfield defenders are going to have to make a decision. And what he was trying to do, he was aiming to isolate like the third defender out from the ruck. And there's an example where he's looking at someone like Chance Wenglusi, not picking on him, but just using him as an example of a tight defender. And he's trying to get O'Keefe and Waitokia to jump past the lane, the passing lane, and then he can either go behind them or run at a tight 5 defender who's isolated. So he picked on Chance Wenglusi. Then he tried a loop play, because if he plays the loop, again, the outside defenders might go past the ball. Mompson jumped out and he had a chance of playing behind him. He didn't, but it's another decision that the defence has got to make. Then he comes back the other way. They target Wengluski again. Meeks is at playmaker and he hits the lead runner, Lange. So what he's trying to do there, Meeks delays, shapes to go out the back. So O'Keefe jumps past. What that means if Lange Hapuaki catches the ball, unfortunately he drops it, right? Then he can get a leg drive on that defender. Now he can offload, and O'Keefe's passed the ball because he's gone up so fast and he can't recover. So again, you've got to look at, is it the tactics or the execution? If Lange catches that ball, they are in behind O'Keefe and they've got a shot. And so I thought that was the change that Giteau made. And again, they'll learn so much from it. There was another one where he double pumps. So he fakes the wide ball, getting them to jump up, disconnects Wengluski and Mompson, and then he makes a short pop to Dennis, who offloads for the big line break. He even made a break of his own, Giteau, where he had an inside option. This was in the first half. He had an inside option to Van der Merwe. So that caught Heaton's eye on the inside, and then it isolates the third defender, Dam, who's not quick enough to deal with someone like Giteau. So that's another way of attacking against a hard blitz, is make that third defender or type 5 defenders on the inside make decisions. But there have to be options running at them. And obviously you can't do it all the time because they'll just eat you up. So a bit of variety, but then attacking in that lane with someone as clever as Giteau and some offloads around that area and hitting lead runners. I think it was a nice change by LA as they tried to do something else. But ATL kept standing up to it, and ATL kept doing a great job. But LA will game plan better now when they come in, if they get another chance to play them.
Absolutely. And I think if you get the set piece, like, mate, the job they did on LA at set piece was phenomenal. But if LA get that set piece right and they get some of those launches better, there's a strong case I think they score as well. I think last point I'll probably make is in the first half especially, it wasn't even they self-inflicted 2 or 3 poor drives or miscommunications, you know, whether they were going to peel or do whatever at the line out, and if I just said play off the top, lads, and get some phases down there, I reckon you'll get some decent reward, especially early on as well. And as the game was going, that's probably the last thing I was at, is I think they just could have, you know, maximized their opportunities just to play rugby down in Atlanta's half, because Atlanta dug in well, but that's what the name of the game is controlling where that game was played and giving yourself the best chance to win.
Yeah, and
deep
again,
breath, Todd's back in. Me and Rob are overloaded out.
No, I mean, you guys, dissected the game, and well done for that. But as a spectator, as a fan going over there and actually introducing new rugby fans that are in the Atlanta area that have never been to MLR and never been to a rugby game, it's a whole culture shock for them, and they enjoyed it. You know, that was a spectacle of, you know, a community embracing, opening up, and the atmosphere was good. The good fans. Military appreciation, but the whole thing was the pressure. I mean, Atlanta had the pressure. It was pressure that caused the forward passes, maybe 4 of them, 5 of them in the game. Yep. The lineouts, you know, taking, you know, 8, 9, away from the clean. So the pressure on there. I mean, the only downside I think for the whole evening was probably the production of the lighting. You know, I don't know if they could play proper night games in Atlanta because of, you know, the lighting. It seemed a little bit dark, and I was wondering how would it look on broadcast, and it was a little bit weird with the shadows and everything else. But I mean, walking through the stadium, having, you know, live music, the smell of barbecue, drinks were flowing. I snuck in a couple gillies, you know, so we enjoyed those on the sideline. But it was a great event. It was awesome. And again, ATL definitely deserved that victory with the pressure that they brought. But, you know, fair warning to all the teams going there. I mean, that's a tough place to play. It's not easy.
No, it was awesome to see. And as we keep saying, the higher the level of rugby, the higher that every single moment of the game is a contest. And that's exactly what it was there. And then that's why you'd see the knock-ons or the mistakes at the line-outs. And for me personally, that was probably my favourite game of MLR I've ever watched. I absolutely loved it. Thought it was brilliant.
Agreed.
Utah hosting Austin. I mean, this was definitely, you know, going into it, the game of the week or the runner-up for game of the week, because these guys have been going, you know, second, third, second, third. And this was definitely wanting to, you know, who's going to take that playoff spot. Obviously, there's a lot of running, a lot of room for playoffs, but this wanted to set the standard. And Utah just came out of the gates scoring, I think, 22 points to 0. They were just on a different gear than Austin, and it wasn't even close throughout the whole game. But to get into it, Corbs, what are your thoughts on that on that game?
I think, big picture, what a statement from Utah in the West to show that, they are still very much in this. And, it's going to take a big run from either Austin or San Diego to sort of knock them out of that second spot. I thought that was really impressive. And I think probably Austin could not handle the explosiveness of Utah. And I think, Utah up there, crowd, atmosphere, play fast. Mikey Teo and Mika Cruze are running riot on teams. Baska is 100% one to watch at 9. They're really impressed with him. And I just think, Austin's defense, the Sterilizers is built on set piece dominance and defense. We've given Scott Lawrence a lot of credit on this pod, and I think he really deserves it as one of the best American coaches in the MLR, head coach. But Sean Pittman deserves a real pat on the back too, because I think the set piece of Utah is really starting to come together. Their scrum, their line out, Austin couldn't get any ins there, and then they were losing the collisions and never able to sort of slow Utah down at times. And I felt Utah just blew them away with too much firepower. And Austin, their default when they're under pressure is to go harder at their set piece. And I felt like Utah had the answer there, and it didn't leave them many places to go to try and win the game back.
Yeah, it was kind of, I think it's just one of those days for Austin where they lost 3 starters in the first half. They had a yellow card in the first half. And it's interesting because they're talking about, they're interviewing Mikey Teo. Oh, how did you beat the Austin Blitz? Oh, we wanted to get the ball. They didn't beat the Blitz. You don't have to beat the Blitz, by the way. You don't have to you just have to beat the defense. You just have to score points. It doesn't matter whether you beat the Blitz or not. You see, it's hard to beat the Atlanta Blitz, but you don't have to do that. Toronto didn't beat the Blitz, but they scored 4 tries against Atlanta, or 3 tries. I can't remember. But so what happened was those tries came from a drive. They came from a length of the field run where there's no line speed up there in that end of the field. They came when they had a yellow card, when it's difficult to have line speed with a yellow card, an interception, a TO in line, which was a great line, and another interception. So it's not like they were just going wide and beating them, but that's even better to have all those different strings to your bow and different ways to score. And as you say, Pittman's fired up. We know they've got a good drive. Now the defence is coming to play as well with a couple of intercepts. That's always a really good sign that you're putting pressure. And then talking about strings to the bow, did anyone see what position was Mike Teo playing? Because I think I saw
10,
him at 9,
15.
10, 15. I think he was picking and going like a back row. He took a line like a 12 for the try. Yeah. That's got to be one of the best MLR performances ever by an individual, isn't it?
Mate, he is absolutely on fire over there. Like, he is on fire, and everyone feeds off of him too. Like, he's just such a live wire. He gets the ball, makes it. You see, Mike T makes a little spark from somewhere, and the whole team come alive. I think, honestly, like him and Mika as a 1 and 2, like what a mentor for someone like Mika Cruze to have someone like Mikey Teo to play with week in, week out, who they feed off each other. It's always one of them offloading to the other, which is creating something. Like they're so in sync with each other. I absolutely love that. It's something I would, I would, if I was involved in the Eagles, be considering that partnership has got to be, something I'm looking at long term, because it's sensational to watch.
Might just give Teo 4 different shirts and just throw him out there.
One
hooker as well. I reckon he could be a hooker as well with that build.
Let's clone him. I mean, the try. I mean, I'm not in charge of the Gillies try of the week, but it's got to be at least up there or runner up. But I mean, those guys were carving up, and those guys, and it's amazing that everybody sees it. And I mean, you go to the Rugby Network, and they have memes about Teo and Cruze, going through it, because that's what we got to celebrate as fans. I mean, that partnership. I mean, it's kind of like that Brady Gronk, minus a few inches and a couple $100 pounds between the two.
Couple $1 million
exactly.
And a couple Super Bowls, but yeah,
and quite a few zeros on their bank accounts. But I mean, that's what we have to do. We got to celebrate that kind of that stuff. And Teo is definitely, he's my favorite player in the MLR this year. And to see him, and Cruze could not have gone to a better team to complement his skills for his next development, as you were mentioning.
Yeah, and I'd also add to that, Todd. That's also a great coaching job by Sean Davis and Sean Pittman, because you've got to know how to harness Mikey. You want to bring the best out of him. And I'm joking, but sometimes it is on you go, son, because you might know a bit more than us, about this game, because he's so unpredictable. It makes it so hard to defend, and you almost don't want to rein him in when he's on that sort of form. You just want to release him and sort of say, "Catch me as if you can." Speaking of which, did you see old Forrest Gump? Bailey Wilson, I think he was still accelerating when he went over the try line. There was no one near him for 50 metres.
Reception. What?
Pick your knees up, son.
That's a GPS stat, mate. He was going for that top speed stat on the GPS. He wanted that 10 metres a second or whatever it is.
Fair play. You see, there you go, though. That's that, mate, having those youngsters. Do you know sometimes you hit upon something where you have some youngsters come through and they just got all the enthusiasm in the world, and they made him captain. That's another big decision. Similar to someone like Sam Warburton that Gats made captain of Wales when he's incredibly young. But he's doing a fantastic job as well. So a really good mix there, and I'm excited to see how they go now. I'll put the brakes on slightly here, because I think Austin's run-in's much easier than Utah's. So Utah, this is still a probably a three-way battle for second, right, between Austin, Utah, and Legion. Austin go away. Austin now play Houston, which is if you don't win that, you don't deserve to finish second, right? So Houston's a bit of a gimme. Toronto and Seattle. That's three of the worst, more struggling teams in the league, right, for Austin. Then they play San Diego, which is the big one. So they'll be putting, everything towards that. But they could have 3 wins going into that game. Then they play LA. Do you reckon they might get on the phone if they need to win for second place? Gilly, yeah.
Gilly.
Come on, lads. Maybe pick the second team. Few line out throws, overthrows, or something like that. And then they go to OG. So they'll, and again, they could win that. Utah, on the other hand, have got to play San Diego, New York, ATL, and LA in their last 6 games. That is a tough schedule. So it was a great performance there by Utah, but against the depleted Austin team, and they do have a tougher run in my opinion.
Just to back it up a little bit more on that performance of Utah, I mean, even us, we're laughing about it. We're on the edge of our seats, and we're talking about the thing. Whenever they play, they are expressing themselves. They're having a good time. You see Teo making that underline, I don't know what jersey he was wearing, 12 or number 6 or whatever jersey, playing what he was doing, scoring that try, carving up the defense, and he's having a good time. People are celebrating. That's what you want to see. People enjoying themselves. And I wouldn't take them. I understand that they have a tough run, but you know what? With that enthusiasm, people getting behind that, it's hard to stop that.
Todd, you reckon they'll finish second?
No.
I think you got to remember. That some of those Eagles are going to be away in some of those big games at the run-in too.
Yeah.
And you take Mike Teo and maybe 1 or 2 others out of that team when you need them.
Yeah.
Might be a different story. Same thing, if Sam Wu-Ching and a few guys are missing here or there, like. It's another wrinkle.
Got so much more depth now, mate.
I agree. So I don't think I'm just using that as an example. I'm just not saying that taking him out. I'm just saying it's just something as we talk about those run-in games and the way that it's going to come down to the wire. Who is missing who in those weeks, which is TBD still, is going to be important when you look at some of these teams as well.
Great point, Corbs. I mean, that is definitely a tough thing that we've talked about in the previous weeks of like club versus country versus club, and when it goes. And those are definitely the weekends where those clubs are definitely going to want those stars. But time will tell. But that was it was a great performance by Utah. Austin is definitely licking their wounds, and no doubt, with the last games, they'll put a much better performance. Last game of round 11 was hosted in the nation's capital, D.C. versus New York. I mean, there was some pretty big names in the crowd, some politicians, some WWE Hall of Famers in there, and it was great to see that. But that's as far as D.C. brought, because New York just came out clobbering and had a top performance. Hodes, What were your thoughts on that game?
Bloody hell, I said AETL had a good 20 minutes. Well, Rooney were 26-0 up, I think, after 20 minutes. So, firstly, just like to say congratulations to Marty Veal. He wasn't at the game. Emma Veal in hospital having their second baby. So a great time for them. And Marty Burke stepped in. Yeah, big. The next generation, another US qualified player. There you go. Yes. So, again, like everyone speaks very highly of Marty Burke, and I think the impact that he's having there as well from Bay of Plenty. And you can see, the confidence in that group. And again, they just came out flying. It's like a 30-meter line-out drive try. Thaka Balavu off a bit of a lucky bounce from a chip. Breakley, the third and fourth tries are more significant for me because they sum up Rooney. They make a lot of offloads. They've always got support around, but they're not like risky offloads. They're beating the man, and then it's pretty simple and easy offloads, pretty low risk. Breakley from offloads and good support, and then Foden from a little Ellis step and offload. I mean, Ellis must be having the time of his life. He must be loving it here. So yeah, it was incredible. They were just off to the races, and then unfortunately they get the yellow card to Pryor. Then Bennett gets the yellow card for the trip, and all of a sudden, are the OGs in it? And then Nagali, bloody hell. Have you ever done that, lads? Have you ever dropped it over the line, early celebration?
One time,
I have, mate.
You have, yeah. Todd, you can't do it twice. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Did you? What was the game, Todd? What happened?
Oh, you don't want to know. It ended up being a yellow card. I ended up throwing the jersey over with frustration, embarrassment, everything else. It was back in the day. It was only a yellow card, so not a full sighting, but very embarrassed. I'm getting red as speaking about it.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah, it don't really cover yourself in glory, because that was a clear try, and they would have been back within 12 or 14 points. But they were never really in the game, Corbs. What did you think?
No, I agree. I thought Rooney blew them away. I think Rooney are adding just layers upon layers to the game. We've seen that sort of defensive battler tag that they've had at times where they've been able to dig in, but the impressiveness with their attack, and obviously the maul has always been a Rooney weapon, but I thought, like you already touched on some of the tries, the creativity, finding space behind with other little chips and stuff, the Andy Ellis chip that I think Foden gathers, and then the offload is an absolute fantastic try there. For Will Leonard, and I just think Rooney are really sort of gathering steam. I think they're going to be a tougher and tougher out. You can see that the coaching, they're adding more layers to their attack, and I think they've got more identities. And I just think their set piece is strong too, and they have good control at 9 and 10. And I think one of the bigger points is they were able to go out and attack like that without Hollingshead. And Bennett again has played 2 games at 10. And they've still come away with 2, impressive looking W's. So fair play to Rooney at the moment. I think they're gathering some momentum over there on the East.
Yeah, it's been their best attacking games, actually, the last 2. So, you'd think that Hollingshead could come in and even accelerate that. But Ellis is dangerous at 10. I mean, they're not taking him off. Conor McManus comes on, you think, well, they back the young fella and they get Ellis a rest, and Ellis goes to 10. Fair play. And then 78 minutes, got to be Gillies' try of the week, eh?
Gillies' try of the week. I'm going to tee you up, Rob, all right? I'm going to tee you up. Let's do it.
Okay.
This week's Gillies' try of the week is from some of the silky work of Rugby United New York, finished off by Chris Matina. Take it away for us, one and only Rob Hoadley.
Well, he's got plenty in the tank. Ellis, he spots the gap from underneath his own poles. He says, let's play the space. He sees 2 big fellas in front of him. He says, I'm going to take him on. I still got gas in the tank. Gets to about halfway, finds Pryor in support. Then McManus, great 9 support line. And Matina's there to finish it off. What a try. Length of the field, coast to coast.
And that is this week's Gillies' try of the week. Mate, it was phenomenal. I thought Pryor had a fantastic game. I thought he's a dangerous runner. The quick line out, and then the try that he finished off there as well. Like he's big, he's long, he's rangy, he can offload, he's fast. It gives him a line out option. Like New York got some players, mate. I think they're going to be They're going to be a force. And I was just thinking about their season in general. They're them and Toronto are the two teams that have gone to Atlanta and actually, carved them up. And that is, something to be said for Rooney in the back. Even if they end up going to Atlanta for that playoff game in the East, which could happen, they've already gone there and got the W, and they've got the sort of the game plan that will make that a real contest and not just be a foregone conclusion, which I think some teams going to Atlanta might be.
Yeah, look, we're going to talk about the playoffs more and more, right? Trust me, this week will be one of many. Every week, you think it's the most important week, and now this week will be one of many. This doesn't really just the points that people get count towards the end, but the results, the performances, it won't be remembered at the end. We've still got 6 weeks. We've got players that will be going away for international duty. We've got some teams, we used to call it in England, that they're on the beach. Their minds are on the beach at the end of the season because they're out of it. They've got nothing to play for. So you could see some basketball scores here because one team's got a lot to play for and one team doesn't. See, for instance, San Diego, Houston at the weekend. So a lot of things are going to change between now and the end of the season. But I think from this game, two of the highlights has got to be, it was done pretty early, but Tusitala, the deaths there at Nagali was one of the funniest things I've seen. Did you see him? You could literally, he went, "What was that?" And he's just staring at him. Oh my days. I wouldn't have wanted to be in that change room at half time. And then Hanko breaking down the right hand side. And he sees clear space. There's space in behind. There's only one thing to do. But I think he was fumbling it for his phone to call JP Smith to see, what do I do? There's chip space. And by the time he tried to reach for his phone, it was an air kick. That wasn't pretty.
It was not pretty, mate. It was the absolute right decision. The space is on there, but it just even highlights how silky that kick was from JP Smith. That not everyone can do it because air ball,
mate,
as such as we say in America.
MLR chip coach specialist. I think Hanko would be his first customer.
And that's it for round 11 MLR breakdown. What a weekend. Great host. And, thank you all for our military men and women that have serving. And obviously we're paying respect to the ones that paid the ultimate sacrifice for us to live here in a beautiful, wonderful #1 country. So thank you again, and see you next week.
That is a wrap on the round 11 MLR breakdown. Rob, Todd, thanks again for all your time. For everyone listening, we really appreciate all the support. Keep checking us out on our social handles on Instagram at The American Rugby Show, on Twitter at The Am Rugby Show. Tons of content coming out. We're really ramping it up and trying to grow our presence. Support us. Tell your friends about us. The pod is growing. Our numbers are going up. We're all really excited and we love catering to you all. And a quick shout out to remind you all to check out Nate Ebner on Eagle Watch, and to carry on with, we'll be dropping the State of the Union later this week.